Okay, so welcome back. From the last video, this is where we left off with a finished wheel. And I got 3 more to do, but on this video, I'm going to focus more on the soldering part of it, and then we'll do the valve stems and the knockoffs and actually get some tires mounted. So to begin with, we're going to do what we saw in the last video, putting one of these pieces in the fixture here, and one of those pieces on here, and then we'll get it clamped down with this, and then we'll put the spokes in. And I'm not going to dwell on the spokes too much because I think we saw that pretty well in the last video, but we got to get the spokes in before we can solder them. So I will just kind of briefly show how the spokes go in. And if you remember from last time, I just use a little piece of Kapton tape to protect the nickel plating of that center hub. And that's just a piece of tape just kind of folded in half like that. And that is just going to go right in there. So when I screw that down, it hopefully won't damage the nickel plating on the edge of that. So we'll get that a little bit tight and then finish tightening these, and then that should clamp everything down together. Now right now I have not even looked at the clocking of the spokes. We need to get a couple in there first, and then we can rotate that as needed. So I'm just going to start over here, and we'll put one in. And we'll just pick a hole right there. Again, I'm not worrying about really which hole it is just yet. Just picking a hole, and it's not even really sticking in all the way yet. I can already tell that it's needs to be clocked different. But then we're going to take the one next to it. Now I'm picking 2 that are going to straddle the center hole here. So this one, and then this one right here. And this one is going to go over, and we're going to skip 4 holes and then stick it into the next one on the top row right there. So as you can see, hopefully, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 holes in between this one and this one. But obviously that's not, those are not clocked right, and one of them just fell out. So now I need to loosen this just a little bit. So we can rotate this. Needs to go that way. Yeah, and those keep falling out. So I've got that rotated to where the angle here is the same as the angle there. And again, we have one of the little bumps right there in between, because that's going to be a spoke that comes up to one of the holes up there. So now that we have those set, we can tighten this back up. Make sure nothing's going to want to move on us. And then we can start putting all the other spokes in. And we're just going to go now to this one. And that's going to go to the next hole on the bottom row. right there. And what I did before is I would pull this one back out just because it's kind of in the way. But now I'm just going to go every other one. So I'm going to skip this one and go to the next one. And then into the next bottom hole. And it's a little difficult doing this through the camera lens. Normally I've got my magnifiers on so I can see what I'm doing better. And then I'm just going to keep continuing on. So again, we'll skip one, and then from here to the next bottom hole, and then skip one to the next bottom hole. The ones I'm skipping go into the top holes, the top row. So for example, this one right here just goes to the next one right there. And then this one goes to the next one right there. Hopefully you can kind of see what's going on there. Hopefully that's making sense. So all of the ones that angle this way are on the bottom row of holes, and all the ones that angle that way are on top of those on the top row of holes. So all I'm going to do is put the bottom row in first all the way around, as much as I can get access to. Then I'll put the top ones on as much as I can get access to. Then I'll loosen those two bolts and turn the whole thing around to make those sections available here, and then I'll finish those. Then I can flip the whole thing over and solder all the points on the back side, and that's where we'll catch up. That's where I'll get back to you here in a minute. So yeah, like I said, I'll get all the spokes in, and then I'll show you soldering on the back side there. Okay, so there's all those spokes in. And you've seen this in the previous video, but now we're going to focus on soldering because I didn't show that in the last video because, as I said, I didn't really know what I was doing. So what I need to do first is clean up the inside there with acetone just to make sure there's no dirt or oil or anything in there. So we'll just kind of wash that out with a little brush and some acetone. And we'll also do another final check just to make sure that all the little crossover points there appear to be even all the way around. And then we'll move over and set up on a different bench that's a little bit less flammable than this one. And we'll put some solder paste and some heat on that. So let me move the camera and get that soldered in. Actually, before we move the camera, let's go ahead and get the solder paste put in. It just comes, this is what I'm using. Don't really remember when or where I bought it, but seems to work okay. And just a little glass thing that holds stuff pretty well. So we're just going to squeeze some of the solder paste in there, and I just apply it with a little sewing needle. Now I already cleaned up the backside with some acetone, so we're just going to go in here and apply the paste around all of the spokes, all of the points of the spokes. And just make sure everything is coated. All right, so that's what it's looking like so far. So now we'll go over to the other bench and put some heat on it. I don't know if you could tell, but it kind of had a dual melting period where it kind of melted once, but it was still kind of gray. And then it melted a second time, or at least that's kind of what it looks like. And where it turns more shiny and silver. And that's where it really starts to flow and wet in. I don't think that camera's focused very well. But that's it. We'll just kind of let that cool, and then we'll put the other row of spokes in. Okay, so that was the hole for the valve stem drilled in right there. So the next step is to solder those two together. And let me go get it set up at my soldering area, and we'll show you what that looks like. Okay, so I just have a little bit around that seam. I have the two wheels on a ceramic soldering pad and two V-blocks that are keeping both wheel halves aligned. And again, I just have a little bit of the soldering paste right in that area there. So I'll get that melted. Then I'll flip it around 180 and do the other side. And then I'll do one side, then the other side. So kind of in quarters. And I'm going to use a soft flame because I do not want to take a chance of melting the solder on the rivets. So trying to hold the camera with one hand and solder with the other. So I'm going to try to keep the flame on the lower part, and as soon as that turns silver and flows, I want to take the flame off. That should be it. So zoomed in a little bit, I think I could have held the heat on a little bit longer, but I'm going to flip that around and then do the other side. So it's pretty much just the same as that. I'll come back to you once all the soldering there's done. Okay, so that's soldered all the way around now, and as far as I can tell, I didn't melt the solder joints of any of the rivets, and it's a pretty good flow all the way around. Not the prettiest, but it'll work. Keep in mind, I'm going to cover all of that area with JB Weld just as extra insurance. But right now that is still pretty warm, so I'm going to let that cool, and then I think we'll start talking about making the valve stems. Okay, so that one turned out pretty well, I think. The seam on the inside is not that bad, and visible, but not too bad. But again, looking from that side, I don't think anybody would really notice too much, but doesn't bother me at all there. So yeah, I think we are ready now to do the valve stem. So my thought for the valve stem was to take a piece of one of the spoke wires and stick it in the hole, which is right there. Yeah, I'm going to have to get my glasses on for this one, but it's right there. Give me a second. Okay, so there's that wire sticking in the hole. You can see the head of the pin right there, and obviously that's way too long, so I'm going to clip that off. But I'm thinking what I'm going to do is just put some heat shrink tubing on it, and then just paint a little yellow cap on the end of it, and that should look like a valve stem. So we'll cut that off. Let's try right about there. I think that looks okay. Let's get some heat shrink on there. This is my skinniest stuff. Hopefully it's a good diameter. I'm just going to cut a little piece off that's longer than it needs to be. And we'll put that on here. Yeah, that's way longer than it needs to be. I'm hoping that it shrinks down right. Just cut a little bit more of that off. It's still long. So let me go hit that with the heat gun, and we'll show you what that looks like. I'm kind of concerned it's not going to shrink down enough, and I'll have to come up with a plan B. But yeah, let me shrink that down and see what it looks like. All right, let me cut it down to length. All right, I think it looks okay. It didn't shrink down on the pen super tight, so I mean, it'll come off pretty easily. So I'm going to take it off, put some CA on it, then put it back on. I will CA the back of the pin head here, just so it doesn't fall out. But that's pretty much it for a valve stem. Like I said, I'm still going to paint a yellow cap on there to make it look like, you know, the cap, the valve stem cap. But for now, we'll just take that off. And we'll keep that safe somewhere, because that would be a shame to have to remake that. So yeah, let me CA the back of that, and then I want to go ahead and JB weld around here, because JB weld takes a while to set. So let me get that JB welded and show you what that looks like after that. Okay, so here's those two, and a closer view of the valve stem. And I don't know, I think it's okay. It looks worse when you zoom in on it, but that's just that heat shrink tubing put back on with some CA, and then just painted the tip of it yellow to represent the little cap. I don't love it, but I mean, I'm zoomed in like 10,000 times so you can like see how bad it looks. To the naked eye, I think it's okay. If it bothers me more later, maybe I'll do something different. But for now, I think it's okay. But anyways, what I want to focus on next are the knockoffs. And these are from the kit. And they're okay, but again, they're just not great. And you'll notice that they're all four identical, but on the real car, you would have two that were reverse, because the left-hand side of the car gets right-hand thread, the right-hand side of the car gets left-hand thread, so they don't loosen up as you're driving down the road. So those little tabs there that you hammer on to knock them off, two of them should be inverted. And to kind of confirm that, when I bought the D'Agostini hood, so I could get the grills for my hood, that hood came with a knockoff. And you'll notice that it's the opposite of all four of those. So I do have a knockoff for the other side. And one of my thoughts was to buy the other 3 from D'Agostini, so I'd have all 4 from D'Agostini. But the other 3 come in one issue. I think it's issue 81 or 86 or one of those. And the cheapest one of those on eBay with shipping is over 80 bucks. And I really don't want to do that. So from the beginning, I've always just thought, well, I'll make these out of aluminum and polish them up out of aluminum. But I don't know exactly how I'll get the Jaguar name in there, because for me to go in with a Dremel tool and scribe in the Jaguar name, I don't think that's going to happen. Now, I have seen some real ones online where they didn't have anything. It was just a plain face. So I could always do that, and it's not unrealistic. So I'm still thinking about that. The other thing I need to think about is how I'm going to attach them. Now, the D'Agostini one is magnetic, so it just clips on with a magnet. I could do that. I could do the same thing, just put them on with a magnet. Or I could just glue them on. I mean, that's how the monogram kit works, or just glue it on. But I would rather thread them on, similar to the real car. And I found these. I have no idea what this is, but I scrounge parts whenever I take something apart. And I noticed that, or I thought what I could do, and I got 4 of these, and only 4 of these. I can turn that down on the lathe so that it fits inside of there, and just bond that in with JB weld, and then cut a little piece off of that and bond that to the back side of the knockoff. So I only need about 2 or 3 threads hanging out. Then I could just thread it right into the wheel. Now, the real car, they're threaded onto the spindle and not the wheel, but that's what locks the wheel to the spindle. Again, I'm not doing it the way the real car actually functions. I'm doing it to where it looks like the real car, right? So that's what I'm going to do for that, to hold the things on. So like I said, I got 4 of those. I was trying to remember what they are. There's some kind of a standoff for some electrical circuitry or printed circuit boards or something. I took it out of some kind of electrical equipment, but I got like a little aluminum collar that's threaded inside and outside with a little knurled knob on the back. And those are all aluminum, so it'd be easy to turn down on the lathe. So that's the plan for those. Now, these from D'Agostini also say, not only does it say Jaguar, but it says unlock. I think it says unlock. It says undo, and then it says left side with a different word in the middle I can't read. But left side and undo. And of course, Jaguar. I'm not going to worry about the undo and the left side, but if I can get the Jaguar in it, I'd be happy with that. And if I can't, then they'll just be plain. So yeah, let me get some of that done. I'll come back when I got some more to show you. Now, I could go ahead and put a tire on. Now, something that I've noticed with these tires is that one edge is very slightly bigger than the other edge, and not by much, just enough to be annoying. So, for example, if I tried to fit that in there, it's fairly tight, and on this side, it's a little bit easier. So I want the easier side to be on the side where the spokes are, because the diameter is a little bit bigger because of the spokes. So I want that side to go towards the spokes. And just to help out a little bit, I'm going to go through and just chamfer that edge a little bit from the inside, just like that, all the way around. And hopefully that'll clear some room for those spokes that have been bent back. And again, not touching along here. So that should allow that to set in nicely, with the spokes hopefully being able to get out of the way. And also what I want to do is put some foam in here. I've got some of this. Now that squish is pretty flat. Perfect. And We'll just see how well that goes over top of this. It'll work. And we'll see how well it goes inside the tire. Now the thought is, this will help push the sidewalls out up against the beads. Whether it actually does that or not, I don't know. And am I going to be able to get that in there? Probably not. This foam does squish pretty flat. Okay, so I think that's in okay. And normally you soak these in hot water. But that's on the D'Agostini models where you have a higher ridge in the middle you're trying to stretch it over. I'm hoping this will just stretch over the bead without too much issue, without having to heat it. Maybe. So just getting one lip around, trying to work it around. It kind of helps to put it on the table, give you something to push on, get that lip worn, get that lip run around, and there it is. I got a little bit of foam sticking out here. I got to try to work back in. Just a little piece of styrene. To push the foam back in there. I think that's it. And just pushing it onto the other half on the back. I think that's it. It's a little bit of a gap here. Get that wheel pushed in there. The foam didn't quite do exactly what I was hoping it would have, but I think it helped a little bit maybe. But there's one wheel on. It's not as tight around here as I was hoping, but and that's the inside that nobody will see unless you flip the car upside down. As long as that's on here, yeah, I mean, I think that's it. I honestly wish it fit better. It's not perfect, but I think that's as good as I'm going to get it. I mean, it's not terrible. I think it looks all right. I'm going to have to ream out the hole a tiny bit, but there it is on the car. I like it. I think it's good. I think I'm happy with it. I might be just nitpicking a little bit, but I don't know. I think for a homemade wheel, I think that's as good a fit as I'm going to get. One done, 3 to go. Okay, so I was talking about these last. It has been probably 3 days since the last time I recorded anything, so I really don't remember what you just saw like 5 seconds ago. But I decided to make these out of copper. So I figured if I made them out of copper, I could etch the letters in and then nickel plate the piece. But I had to order the copper. I finally got that in yesterday. So this is my order of copper. I got more than I need. I should be able to get everything out of one bar. But I bought 2 just because I'm sure I can use it for other stuff later. So the plan is to put this thing in the lathe and turn them out of that. So what I'll do is I'll take some measurements Basically, pretty simple. Just an outside diameter. Now the monogram part is 23-ish, right around 23 millimeters diameter. The D'Agostini part is not quite 22, 21.9. So I don't think it's super critical, just as long as they're all the same. I'll probably just do an even 22. That'll make the math easy. So make them 22 here, and then outer 13. That's pretty much the same. As long as it fits over that, yeah, 13 will be perfect. So, and these little tabs, that measures pretty much 1, a little bit less than 1. Yeah, the monogram kit is almost 1.5. The D'Agostini is not even 1. So I'll probably make them like 1.25 maybe. Okay, so I cut a shorter chunk off of one of those bars. Otherwise, that would have been sticking way out to there, and I didn't want that much stick out. No need for that. So also, I want to use a collet, but yeah, that's my biggest one. So I got to turn that down to 20 millimeters, or 19 to 20 millimeters to fit this. Then I can hold that piece in a collet, and I should have enough to get all 4 of my parts out of what's left there, hopefully. I think I cut it long enough so I could get all 4 of them out of there. This way I can hold it in a collet, then I can put it in a milling machine to mill the tabs and stuff like that. So I'm going to turn that down to fit in there, and then put a collet in here, and then we'll start machining the actual parts. Okay, so I got that turned down, and so I can put that collet on it, and get rid of the 3-jaw and stick that into collet, and then start turning my parts down. So I'll get back to you once I got that all set up. All right, so now we'll just take that down to 22 millimeters. I think it's 25 now, something like that. But we'll just turn that down to 22, and then we'll start putting the front feature in. So I'll get back to you when I'm ready, once that's down, and we're ready to do that other part. Okay, this is where we are so far, and I did go by those measurements, but it didn't quite look right, so I decided to just make a form tool. So I basically just took a cutter blank, and I took it to the grinder, and I basically just cut the shape in it that I wanted, matching it up with the kit part. So basically just matching it up with the kit part like that, and then just pushing it in to get the shape, and then finish it off with some sandpaper. Okay, so this is the brass one that I cut out. Now, as best as I can tell, when I look at these on the real car, they look like they're aluminum or polished aluminum. So my original thought was to make them out of aluminum. But to get the Jaguar logo in there, I thought the best way to do it would be to use the CNC router, but I didn't think I would be able to do the G-code for it because I'm not that good at that, and I don't know how to do that yet really well. So my thought was if I did it out of copper, then I could etch the lettering in and then use like printed circuit board etchant chemical to etch it in. So I cut that out, I painted it, and then I scratched in. I took a little pin vise here with a little needle in it, so I could scratch in Jaguar, and then I put it in the etchant. And let's take a look at what this looks like. And I didn't really let it etch that deep. I pulled it out to check on it after, I don't know, about 10 minutes or so. But the lettering just looks like garbage because my handwriting has not improved any since about the 4th grade. Because I basically just, cut into the paint by hand and it just looks bad. So I started rethinking how I wanted to make these. And so what I decided to do was try to use the CNC router. So basically what I did was I clamped one of these into the little vise on the router, and I put a little pointer, and I used the jog command to go to all the different points and then wrote down those coordinates, which is here. So starting here at 0, 0, so that's 0.3, back to 0, 0, 0.50, that point right there is 0.5, 0.75, and so forth and so on, just putting down all of the points so I could then just write my own G-code, which looks like this. So there is the G-code for each letter, and then I basically wrote the script and put it in the machine. I'll show you what that looks like here in a second. And I then tried on just a scrap of aluminum, and I got promising results. I didn't go very deep on that one, but that was looking pretty good, pretty promising. Now, it didn't happen first try. It took several tries. I had to go back and change some of these a little bit. I had to make the whole thing just a little bit taller. The R was really giving me problems. Everything was basically just straight lines, except for the R, and there is a radius function. So for example, GO1 is to move to those coordinates at that rate. GO2 is an arc, and I could not get the arc to work right. Maybe because the radius was just too small, because I was using a radius of 0.2 or 0.3. Well, I changed it. I modified that several times. And I just could not get the radius to work. So instead, I just made it from here to a point here, point here, point here. So it's more of a box instead of a round. But if you look at the kit parts, the kit part is kind of like that as well. By the way, this one is monogram. This one is D'Agostini. And actually, I don't know if it's shown up on camera very well, but the monogram lettering is actually more clear, more crisp than the D'Agostini lettering. So I just thought that was kind of funny. Because, you know, the D'Agostini model is supposed to be, you know, like really nice. And the old I don't know, when did the monograms kit come out? In the 70s or 80s? Probably the 80s. The lettering is a lot nicer. So anyways, since I was able to do that, finally, I decided to just go back to aluminum, make them out of aluminum. Plus, the aluminum cuts so much nicer. I was having a really hard time cutting the copper. Copper, I don't know if you've ever turned copper on a lathe, but it's just really grabby. And it just meaning it just grabs the cutter. Now, part of that is probably me not knowing how to properly grind a cutter for copper. But I have so much better results with aluminum than copper. I was really struggling getting this part out of here. So I did a practice aluminum one, and then I put that in the CNC, and it came out pretty well. I'm pretty happy with that. Kind of hard to get that in focus, but I'm pretty happy with that. But I kind of screwed up and got the diameters here wrong. So anyways, that's the wrong size. Now to cut those, like I said, I made a forming tool to just come in and form it. So I'm going to show you now. Again, this one's no good because the diameters are too big. So let me go over to the lathe and I'll show you what I have set up on the lathe. All right, so there's my chunk of aluminum in there. And I went ahead and once I got it turned to diameter, I put the collet in the mill and put a flat on there and on the other side. That way when I part them off, I'll have something to hold into the little clamp or the into the vise on the CNC router. This is the form tool. And so what I do is I just form the face, and then I change the cutter to a cutoff, and then I cut it off. Just to show you how the form tool goes. All right, so there's all 4 of them, and I left a little bit on the back because I need to make the thing to hold the threads so I can screw it onto the wheel later. So I'm just going to pick one of them, and we're going to set it up to put the lettering on. So we just have to locate where 00 would be. Actually, I'm going to sand that. There's a blemish there. I'm going to sand that off first. All right, so just Sharpie up the front of that. And I need to find the 00 point for the lettering. So that's where the lettering is going to set. So 00 is that lower left corner right there. And that should center up the lettering there. So let's go put this in the CNC router and see how that goes. Okay, so here's the G-code. If we zoom into this, this is actually the side view. So that's if you're looking at it flat on. Let's take a look at the top-down view. Top view, so there's the lettering for Jaguar. You can see how I did the R instead of an arc, which is actually closer to how it looks on the model, I think. And then at that front view, so there's the J, the A, the G, the U. So that's showing the curve of the piece. And I don't think I have the curve exactly perfect, but I think I have it close enough it'll still work. And of course all the G-code over here. And everything is zeroed. And if we take a look down here, I'll try to record this, but it's kind of small. I don't know how well you're going to see it. So I'll get the spindle turned on and then I'll hit start. Yeah, it's too high in the middle. But I think we'll still be okay. I'm just going to go back to 0. I'm going to lower the cutter by 0.1. And go again. Yeah, it's too high in the middle. Right, hopefully I didn't mess it up. I basically loosened it and I brought this edge up a tiny bit. So let's see if I screwed it up or if I fixed it. I think I screwed it up, but let me take it out of there, we'll clean it up and see what it looks like. So here's those pieces now, trimmed up on the back. And so basically I made a mandrel on the lathe. Let me grab that real quick. So I made a mandrel for the lathe, basically just cut into here so that would fit in here like so, and those got super glued in place so I could then take the back side to the dimension and shape that I want. And so now this piece, which again, this is aluminum, with that back side turned down like that, that'll set in like so. And so I only need about 3 or 4 threads. So that'll get cut off to about right there. And then it'll get JB welded to the back side of that. And then the nut right here, that'll get turned down to fit inside of here, and that'll get JB welded inside of here. So then that'll allow me to thread the knockoff onto that. So that's how that'll get attached to the wheel. Now I know that's not how the real car works. I think I've said this before, but that's fine. Remember on the monogram kit, the knockoff just got glued right to that. And that's how Monogram did it. They just glued it right on there. Mine is going to thread on. But what I want to do now, actually, is I want to finalize these. I want to finish these. And so I need to lay out and mark up for the little tabs. So basically, just using some Sharpie. And what I'll do is take dimensions. I'll take dimensions from the kit part, and I'll just lay out for those tabs and then cut off all that excess. Okay, so here's a couple of those marked out, and are marked in the back. That one's left, and this one would be right. And again, the monogram kit, they're all 4 the same. But again, I just marked out where I want to cut. Now what I can do, or what I did, was I turned down a piece of steel, and that'll fit on the back side like this. And then I turned down a piece of aluminum that's dished out in the front. That'll go in the front that way. And so that way I can clamp that into the mill, and I can then mill to the line. And then these 2 pieces will act as a file guide to file the round part of it. And I'll just have to file, that shape out of it. And then sand it all smooth and round off the corners and polish it up, and that'll be about it. So let me get this mounted in the mill, and we'll show you what that looks like to start cutting this shape out of there. All right, so I've got that clamped in there between those 2 buttons or guides. I've got the lower flat on a parallel. That's a little bit loose. I need to tap that back down. So yeah, I need to re-loosen the vise, tap that down so it's setting tighter on the parallel. But I've got the cutter zeroed on the top edge, and then I've already measured how far down I want to go to that first scribe line, and that'll get that first one. And like I say, I have the Z axis zeroed, and so I'm going to go down. I got to double check my notes, but it's like 6.5 or 6.8 millimeters from that edge down. And then I'll flip the thing over and do the other one. And then I'm just going to go by eye to the line and then file it to the right shape. So let me get that milled down, and we'll show you what that looks like before files. All right, so here's what that looks like so far. And so again, what I'll do is I'll put that back on here, put that back on here. I can then squeeze that in a vise and then run the file around here. And again, that'll keep the shape so I don't file too much, and still have to file that edge down. That's a little bit too thick here, so file down to the line there. So I got to take a little bit more off here, and again around the curve, and then kind of round the corners, round to the edges, and do a final sand and a polish. And that's pretty much, that's pretty much the idea. That's how it's going. So just a lot of filing and sanding and getting it to shape. So I'll just come back to you once it's all to the right shape. All right, so there it is after sanding and polish. Probably use a little more of a sand and polish, but I think it's looking pretty good. I mean, keep in mind, this is zoomed in like 500 times. To the naked eye, it looks a whole lot better. Of course, I'm getting my fingerprints all over it. But, yeah, I mean, I've never been much of a polisher. So I think for me, that's looking pretty good for me. I'll go over it again. I can polish it some more. There's a few little light scratches in there I could get out. But that's it. And again, just for reference, there's the D'Agostini one. And here's the monogram one. And so again, I just filed and sanded to the line, bent the little tabs a little bit, and then polished it up. So the next step, what I need to do here, after another polish, I guess, remember these pieces right here, and I had aluminum nuts for those. Well, I went ahead and cut off some short sections of that, and I turned the aluminum nuts down. So we have these pieces of thread, and so that will JB weld right in place right there. So that gives me a few threads on the end of that knockoff. So that'll get JB welded here. And then the other part right there, that was the nut. That will get JB welded right in there. And so then I can screw the knockoff in place. So I'm going to get those JB welded in place, then I'll show you what the final product looks like. All right, so there it is. And so if we unscrew that, there's the internal threads from that aluminum threaded nut that I turned down to fit in there. And of course the external threads there, so that just goes on and screws onto the wheel. And as I have said before, I know that's not the right way. I know that's not the way the real car does it, but it's okay. So you don't have to leave me a comment to explain how the real car does it. I know how the real car does it. I did it to where it would work on the model the best. So that just screws on here. And on the real car, that would also be left-hand thread on the right-hand side. But anyways, basically, once this goes on the axle of the car, then a washer goes in there, then a screw, and then that holds the wheel on, and then that goes on to cover up that screw. So if we take a look at how that fits on the car, Put the wheel on like so. And again, a washer and a screw goes into there. That'll lock the wheel on. And then the knockoff screws onto the wheel just like that. So that's it. Now the last thing I want to do here is on a lot of photos of the real car, I noticed that the lettering has like black paint in it. So I do want to get some black paint in there. Let me just try that here real quick. We'll try some panel line accent here. See if this shows up good enough. And I just put a little bit over here. We'll wipe off the excess. See if any stays in the lettering. Kind of. I think there's a little bit stiff. Yeah. Yeah, that looks not too bad. I might try actual paint later. I might do like an enamel paint and then buff it off after it dries. But that's not too bad. That helped a little bit. But anyway, so there's a knockoff done. I still have 3 more to finish. The other 3 are at that stage. The other 3 are at this stage here. There's the other 3. I just got to make sure I get 2 left hand and 2 right hand. That would suck if I screwed up and made one too many of the wrong size, and I'd have to remake one of these. And I think it looks pretty good. I'm very proud of that, and I think this video is plenty long enough, and it's been way too long since I've had a video out, so I'm going to call this one done here. So as always, until next time, thanks for watching.